All right. So, hello. Welcome to Wellness Wednesday. I am Crystal Allen Joyner, and I am the Assistant Director over here at CAPS. So, before we get started today, as everybody's kind of coming into the room, for those new followers or for those consistent, dedicated followers of ours, I do want to take a moment and I just want to give a special shout out to the Minorities in Psychology Club. So you guys, the Minorities in Psychology Club recently reached out to me to do a spotlight feature on a counselor. And I just want to say thank you. If you all are interested in taking a look at that feature, we're going to feature it on our Instagram page, or you can find it on theirs, of course. It's m.i.p.mercer. So again, thank you, Minorities in Psychology, for taking the time out to kind of get to know me a little bit better. I am hoping that you all will also get to know some of the other staff members as the school year continues on, and that you'll get a chance to see all of us. So before we get started, let's see here. Today's topic is actually on disordered eating, okay? The information that I'm going to be sharing with you today has been brought to us by the NEDA, which is the National Eating Disorder Association, eatright.org, and the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. So what really is disordered eating? I know most people out there probably are aware of regular eating disorders, or the more popular ones. But today's topic is going to focus more on disordered eating and what that really looks like. Disordered eating can be described as a range of irregular eating behaviors that are rigid. Okay? Now, just because you may have rigid eating behaviors, it doesn't necessarily warrant an actual diagnosis of a specific eating disorder. So just because you have a disordered eating pattern doesn't necessarily mean that you have an eating disorder. So let's take a deeper look into what disordered eating really looks like. It's restrictive eating. Are my behaviors restrictive when I decide that I'm going to sit down and I'm going to eat something? Am I really restrictive in my selections in what I'm going to eat, how I'm eating it, how many times I'm going to eat it? Do I participate in any compulsive eating? Do I eat a lot when I do sit down? Do I just go in and just start eating and have no sense of control at all? Or are there any irregular or inflexible eating patterns that I may participate in on a daily basis? For example, disordered eating may consist of an application of a set of rules. We kind of talked about it a little bit a few minutes ago. What do those rules look like? Does it mean my ability to be able to control or regulate in such a way that's so rigid than the norm of just being able to sit down and eat breakfast, or sit down and just eat lunch and dinner? Am I so rigid about, okay, I'm only going to eat 2 pieces of broccoli, or I'm only going to eat a half a piece of chicken? Am I so rigid in my eating behaviors that there's no opportunity to kind of just be free flowing as it relates to my eating? Binge eating, you guys, binge eating and purging are actually all variants of disordered eating. Disordered eating can actually be on a whole spectrum by itself. It's a whole spectrum of eating attitudes and behaviors that actually have the potential to cause significant distress to a person that's engaging in it. So I'm going to go over some examples of what disordered eating might typically look like. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have disordered eating, but these are some patterns to kind of consider. Frequent dieting. Do you diet a lot? Is there any anxiety associated with specific foods or meal skipping? So when you think about frequent dieting, a lot of times you'll see in social media the thought of intermittent fasting has been introduced. So am I being intentional for prolonged periods, or not even prolonged periods, but is there a routine where I'm going to do intermittent fasting with a goal in mind to frequently diet? Do I have chronic weight fluctuations? That's one of those questions to ask yourself. Like, does my weight fluctuate significantly over time? Am I heavier sometimes and lighter sometimes? Am I paying close attention to that? Do I have any rigid rituals or routines that surround food and exercise? So do I allow myself to kind of overeat and then say, okay, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to work it all off? Am I consistent in that behavior pattern? If so, you might want to consider, do I have disordered eating patterns? What about any feelings of guilt and shame that might be associated with eating? After sitting down, eating a wonderful meal, do I feel guilty about what I just ate? Is there any shame associated with it? Do I have these thought processes of like, man, I know I shouldn't have had that. I shouldn't have ate that burger. Or I ate too much and I just feel so terrible after I just ate. Is there any shame or any guilt associated with your eating patterns? What about any preoccupation with food? So as I go through this list, you guys will notice there's a pattern here. Is there any preoccupation as it relates to my food? What about preoccupation towards my weight? Am I always worried about my weight, my body image, in such a way that it's negatively impacting my quality of life? Am I completely consumed with my weight, my body, how much food I'm putting into my body, to the point where that is all that I am preoccupied with, and that my life is centered around how much food I'm eating? Did I gain weight today? Look at this body fat, or look at no body fat. So all that is a preoccupation that kind of impacts your quality of life when you become so consumed about it. What about any feelings of loss of control around food? That could actually include what we talked about a little bit earlier, is the compulsive eating habits. Do I participate in emotional eating or binge eating? So let's talk about that emotional eating piece. I'm going to be honest, even as a therapist, sometimes you go through highs and lows because we're human. And in that, has anybody out there ever dealt with having a bad day? And so if you're having a bad day, it's like, okay, I'm gonna go get a burger, something that's gonna make me feel better, or I'm gonna go eat a candy bar, or I'm just gonna like continue to eat sugar or continue to eat salt, hoping that my mood will change. That's what we call emotional eating. And of course, binge eating is overeating. And then of course the purging piece is releasing that food after having ate so much. What about exercise? Do you obsess about exercise, the amount of food that you eat as it relates to food restriction, or even fasting? We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier with intermittent fasting, purging, to make up for all the food that you've consumed. So if you find yourself overeating, emotionally eating, compulsively eating, and then you look at these behaviors and you start, okay, I'm going to go exercise and I'm going to go get it off, or I'm going to restrict myself for the next 48 hours through fasting, or I'm not going to just eat it all for an entire week, you may want to think about, do I actually have a disordered eating pattern? And then diet pills, we don't want to forget about that. Do I consume diet pills as a way of getting rid of weight? Do I have an extreme focus on social media as it relates to the appearance, or my appearance, or as it relates to food? Am I constantly focused on social media's portrayal of what my body image should look like? Am I obsessed with it to the point where I'm trying to do all these different methods, or these, as we're talking about right now, disordered eating patterns of rigidness or compulsive behaviors as it relates to my weight, to achieve this image that's portrayed on social media? And then what about a heightened sense or a heightened focus, of course, of my appearance? My appearance as it relates to my body image, how I feel about myself, all of it's related to food. So then I participate in these behaviors so that I can get the results that I'm looking for. Do I skip any meals? That kind of goes back to the intermittent fasting. Am I intentionally skipping meals with a goal in mind to lose weight? And then here's one to think about, especially as a college student. Am I waiting too long to eat? That's a good one. Have I gone all day long and I look up and I'm like, man, I haven't eaten all day? Am I doing this intentionally, or am I doing this unintentionally? So it all kind of depends on what the motive is behind the behavior. So what are some signs of whether or not when a disordered eating pattern, which is what we just talked about, can actually turn into an eating disorder. So here are some signs. Think about your patterns. Is there a pattern of behavior here that I am participating in? Is it something that I'm doing daily? Is it something I'm doing 3 times a week? Patterns, what does it look like? Or is it every now and then, hit or miss, I might overeat, or every now and then I may have an emotional eating moment, but that may not necessarily be a pattern. But if you're seeing that this is happening pretty frequently, that could actually lead to a potential eating disorder. Another sign of disordered eating that could turn into a eating disorder is there any undue preoccupation with food and my body? Remember, we talked about that earlier. Am I always worried about my body image? If I am, I need to take some time to self-reflect and really look at my patterns. Is there a pattern there? Am I always looking at social media, comparing myself, not just in social media, but am I comparing my body image, my body type to someone else or to one of my peers? And then, is there an impairment? Like, am I getting sick after this? Remember, we talked about binging and purging. Is it causing me stress? Is it causing me harm? Eating disorders are serious, you guys, but they are treatable mental and physical illnesses. So there is definitely support out there. So a lot of times when we talk about disordered eating and eating disorders, people typically think that this is a woman's problem, but it's not. Did y'all know that eating disorders or disordered eating actually doesn't have a gender to it? You know, all genders can be affected, all races, all ages, religions, ethnicities, sexual orientations, body shapes, and weights. People of all ages, anybody can be affected by this. Statistically, did you know that 20 million women and 10 million men in America will have a eating disorder at some point in their life? So remember, the eating disorders start off by being disordered eating. 20 million, y'all. 20 million women, 10 million men. I bet you're surprised to hear about the men piece, because sometimes when we look at males, we figure, oh, they don't have any issues, especially if they're working out. But what if it's somebody that overly obsesses about their exercise regimen, only so that they can overeat or they can undereat to achieve a certain goal? Remember, all those are signs of disordered eating. So it's kind of like a slippery slope. You just really got to be careful with that. At this point, I kind of just want to go over some myths about eating disorders. One of them is that eating disorders, it's not a choice. It's not. Sometimes it could be actually environmental factors that steer that, or biopsychosocial diseases that could steer or be the initiators of disorder eating or eating disorders. It could actually be genetic. It could be biological. We talked about it being environmental, or any social elements all play a role in this. They are complex medical and psychiatric illnesses that people just do not choose. So sometimes you may see people struggling with their eating patterns. That's not a choice. It's an illness, but there is support and help available. Some examples of societal factors could be media-driven thin body images. Remember, we talked about social media and how sometimes we can take an over-obsessive approach to wanting to look like some of our celebrities out there, or just some of the people that we see in media, some of the people that we follow. Man, I wish I had my body looked like that particular individual. Other environmental factors are also physical illnesses, any childhood teasing and bullying, or other life stressors. See, we didn't think about that. Did you know that sometimes childhood teasing and bullying about your weight can actually cause people to participate in disordered eating patterns, thus leading to an eating disorder? All those are factors. So how do you get help? Let's talk about that. I want to let you know that, of course, CAPS, we are here to help and support any individual that exhibits any disorder eating patterns. You can come to therapy, give us a call, or there is also assistance through the helpline through the National Eating Disorder Association. They've got support, resources, and other treatment options for you or any loved one that you know that might be struggling with such eating disorders. I want to give out their number. If you want to call them, the number is 1-800-931-2237. You can also text that number, 1-800-931-2237. Or like I said before, you can always call us. Our phone number is 478-301-2862 over here at CAPS. We do have individuals on our staff that work closely with individuals on all levels that are dealing with all different types of mental illnesses or any struggles that they may be dealing with on their day-to-day journeys. But today, I believe that's it for now. Again, think about what we've shared today during our Wellness Wednesday topic. Reevaluate, look at your body, examine whether or not you are participating in some of these patterns as it relates to rigid eating or restrictive eating or irregular eating behaviors, to determine whether or not there is actually a disordered eating pattern that you are participating in, which could ultimately lead to a eating disorder. That is all that I have for y'all today. I want to thank you so much for your time. Consider sharing this video. Consider sharing all of our videos. We at CAPS, we love to be able to come and meet with you every Wednesday to talk about topics that actually you guys have stated that you're interested in. So a lot of these topics, they're not from us. Through our survey usage, you guys have said that you want for us to speak on certain topics, and we hear you. We see you and we hear you. Until next Wednesday, y'all take care, and I'll see you soon.